All right, not even the pouring rain could stop thousands of Trump supporters from going to the Sarasota Save America rally Saturday night with Mr. Trump. On the eve before many were to celebrate their freedom on Independence Day, the former president vowed to take back America. Take a look.
Together we will take back the House, we will take back the Senate, and we will take back America. We're not going to let this happen. 3 days ago, I traveled to the southern border to witness Joe Biden's demolition of American sovereignty firsthand. You saw that. What a demolition it was. The Biden administration's willful and deliberate obliteration of America's borders and immigration laws is a crime against this nation.
Well, joining us now to discuss is the former senior advisor to President Trump. We're talking about Jason Miller. Of course, Jason, let me ask you this. Other presidents, when they leave office, they plan their libraries, they go off and do practically nothing. We don't hear from them for a very long time. Instead, we have the former president out there doing rallies as if he hadn't left office. There's a little bit of a break, you could almost argue. But what's this about? What's he trying to do?
Well, Bob, Amanda, good morning. Great to be back on Newsmax this day after the 4th of July. So what we're seeing from President Trump is really making sure that he's keeping that base alive. He's keeping the MAGA movement, the Make America Great Again, Keep America First movement fired up and vibrant. Obviously, the president has not made a decision yet if he's running again in 2024, but you have to keep working with folks and keep them energized because these midterms coming up in 2022, whether it's Governor DeSantis on the ballot there in Florida or anything else, we have to make sure that the Trump voters are showing up in 2022. I think that's what it's about.
Yeah, I mean, what is it? What are you seeing among his base support in those rallies that indicate something that's significant to you politically? The reason I ask it that way is you could argue that since the midterms aren't for another year and a half, that you wouldn't get involved. But we know the president's going to be very involved in the Republican primaries. Yeah,
and I think there are really two questions there. The first is what I'm seeing. In a lot of ways, there's certain things about 1994 when we had the Republican Revolution led by Newt Gingrich and others, where we saw the Democrats overreach so far in the first 2 years of that Clinton presidency with everything from the way that they were embracing all these liberal policies to Obamacare, or excuse me, to Hillary Care, I should say, sorry, the precursor to Obamacare. But we're seeing that here with the way Democrats, including Kamala Harris, are embracing wokeism, the way that they're critical race theory, the crisis of the southern border, the hyperinflation crisis. So there's a lot of parallels, I think, to 1994 that we're seeing, but also specific to the candidates in places where President Trump is getting involved. Look, we're in primary season. Primaries come up before the general. So we want to make sure that we elect as many mega conservatives as possible. And then as we get to the general election, then there will be a lot more different folks to help out.
Yeah, okay. The former president highlighted how his relationships with other leaders were better than the current president. So let's take a look at what he had to say about that.
I actually had and have a very good relationship with President Putin, but that's a good thing. That's not a bad thing. That's actually a very good thing. And until the plague came in, I had a very good relationship with President Xi of China. And I have a very good relationship with Kim Jong-un. And isn't it nice that you can actually have those relationships? And you know what? And with the European leaders, even though they knew I wasn't going to take their nonsense because they rip us off.
Yeah, that not take their nonsense is what a lot of people consider America first. And there are a lot of folks out there, Jason, that argue that President Biden is not thinking of America first.
No, he's not. And in fact, one of the things, the relationship, sometimes the relationship can be defined as the chummy, I really like this guy, we can work together. Say Shinzo Abe from Japan. The President Trump really had that relationship. But sometimes even more important is the relationship where there's respect and there's strength. And so when you take a look at Kim Jong-un, as President Trump referred to, we now see Biden being tested over and over. I mean, even Xi Jinping in China, look how many flyovers the CCP has done over Taiwan recently. Foreign leaders do not respect Joe Biden.
Yeah. Jason, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the indictments against CFO of the Trump organization and the organization itself, some things. How do you think this all plays out? I mean, even the president, former president himself, mentioned it in his speeches, but how do you think this plays out?
I think it probably plays out the same way that the Steele dossier or the Mueller Russia investigation or impeachment hoax #1 or impeachment hoax #2. It's the continual witch hunt that they will keep going after President Trump through 2024. To be clear, they are never going to stop with this. The fact that Letitia James and Cy Vance, the DA here in New York, where I am, which, by the way, good morning to everybody except Cy Vance and his team of angry Democrats, spent tens of millions of dollars and years going after President Trump. Remember, Letitia James promised when she ran in 2018 that she would get Trump, and all they had to show for it is Alan Weisselberg, the Trump Corporation CFO, who may or may not have not reported on his taxes some free parking benefits, which, by the way, these are benefits that every company, every major company in America will offer. I think that is a massive face plant. I think it's egg on the face for these Democrats who said they were going to get Trump, and it turned out they have nothing.
Okay. Jason, I wasn't sure. I wanted to say happy 4th. It's not the 4th, but I guess we can still say happy Independence Day because it is the national holiday, right?
Absolutely, and that's one of the things we're in launching Getter, our brand new social media platform yesterday. Not only was it Independence Day for the country, but it was independence from the big tech oligarchs and the social media overlords. Come check out Getter, the brand new social media platform where you will not be censored, you will not be deplatformed for sharing your political beliefs. And also critical in this, Newsmax is already signed up and has a very active account. You'll see a lot of breaking news content from Newsmax on the Getter platform. So if you're wondering,
and that is GETTR, by the way, folks, GETTR. Thank you so much, Jason Miller. Thank you, sir. According to the New York Times, quote, today, flying the flag from the back of a pickup truck or over a lawn is increasingly seen as a clue, albeit an imperfect one, to a person's political affiliation in a deeply divided nation, end quote.
Now, the quote from that article goes on to say supporters of former President Trump have embraced the flag at his rallies and across conservative media, but some are worried the left has all but abandoned this national symbol and what it used to stand for, Bob.
Well, it's true, which is unfortunate because what makes our country magnificent is that it does represent everyone. And it does mean, I mean, when I recently went to the National Cemetery in Arlington, and you don't look out there, you see Americans. I don't know who was Republican, who was Democrat, who was independent. I don't know all of that, but there are people who have given their lives so that we can even have this conversation, Amanda.
Yeah, like you're saying, you looked out there and you saw Americans. And, you know, I also want to point out that we have a star for every single state. Like, that flag used to mean something different, and it was unity. And over the course of however many years, you know, through history, it's always been a little tumultuous. There's always been changes, and it has changed. I mean, even here in the city, I walked around. I saw less red, white, and blue than I've ever seen in my life when it came to the 4th of July.
You know, it is an imperfect union. Yes, we get it. We know the founders weren't perfect. We know some of them have slaves. We get it. Look at what's happened since then. We continue to improve. We continue to make more perfections to our imperfect union, and that's what's represented in the flag to me. And I don't care what party you are. I don't care your political affiliation or race. That's just the magnificence to me of what that flag is. Yeah, the ability to unite. Well, Bob, still ahead. Former President Trump visits the border with Texas Congressman Steve Toth, who joins us live. Stay tuned. By Texas Congressman Steve Toth, who visits the southern border with former President Trump and joins us now live to talk about it. Congressman, thank you so much. Tell us, I assume you went along last week. What did you see? What was your impression?
The border's a mess. And it's amazing that we have not done more. It's amazing that Joe Biden is turning his back on it. It's amazing that Kamala Harris, instead of going to the Rio Grande Valley, she goes to El Paso, where we've got a completed wall. So in one breath, they say the wall doesn't do anything and doesn't help. As you cross the river, these people that are coming here illegally in droves, they tear off a wristband They're in multiple colors: red, yellow, white, blue, and in English it says depart. And these are given to them. They're placed on the wrist by the cartels, and the cartels, as they move them through the Rio Grande Valley and the different sectors, they denote that they've paid, and they denote that they are basically the property of these cartels while they're moving them through Mexico. And thousands of them on the U.S., on both the Texas side of the border as well as the Mexican border.
Okay, so the cartels are making a lot of money, then they essentially dump them. That's assuming they haven't robbed them along the way or
Right.
attacked
Oh,
them
yeah.
sexually, yeah, or anything else. Go ahead.
It's too heinous to talk about. You've got little kids that are little girls traveling with condoms in their backpacks, knowing
my.
full well what awaits them through the cartel. We've had a 980% increase in just 2021 over 2020. A 980% increase. And we're only catching 1 out of 3 or 4. So the vast majority of them are getting through. They are overwhelming anything we have. And Texas has some of the greatest assets in the air and on the ground, technology-wise, manpower-wise, aircraft-wise, but it's overwhelming us.
Yeah. What do you think is the solution?
The solution is finish the wall, and then the next thing is this. I serve on the board of directors for Mighty Oaks. We help veterans with post-traumatic stress. One of the greatest things, Bob, that we can do is when our young men and women come back from Iraq and Afghanistan, is send them down to the border. You will have done that rotation 4 times in a year. And what it will do is it will help us integrate these guys back into the normal life that they need to be a part of with their family and a job. While at the same time, too, they'll know a sense of mission, purpose, and unit cohesion by working down the border to preserve, protect, and defend their border. These guys love Texas. They love the United States. And it would be a huge resource for us to be able to put these guys on the border, helping us defend the border.
Are you going to suggest that, or has that been suggested? Where does it stand? Okay, and I know, having lived in Texas, that the legislature only meets every other year, which if they could get rid of the year that they meet, everything would be fine. Let's talk about CRT.
You nailed it, buddy.
Yeah, it's the Texas mentality. I mean, you live there, you either get it or you don't. And
Most don't get
let me
it.
ask you.
Most of the politicians don't get it.
I get it. I mean, I understand what you're saying. Very quickly, you've sponsored a bill to ban CRT teaching in Texas schools. Where does that stand, and why do you think it's dangerous?
CRT is the most dangerous thing. Critical race theory is more dangerous than the border. That we're actually telling teachers that they can tell their kids that you can be judged based on the color of your skin. You didn't pick this. I didn't pick this. We were born with this. Whether you're born black, brown, white, yellow, it doesn't matter. But for some inexplicable reason, these teachers want to teach our children that they should be judged based on the color of their skin, not the content of their character. It's just the most evil thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We're pitting
children. I think
we're pitting kids against one another right now. We have books in school that we've got a book in several schools in the state of Texas called Not My Idea, a book about whiteness. Seriously, we're going to do books about whiteness and brownness and blackness now? I mean, it's insane.
Right. It was supposed to be accept everyone for who they are. Now it's don't accept somebody for who they are. I mean, we can continue that conversation another time, Congressman, but thank you so much for talking with us. I hope you have a great Independence Day, the holiday today. Congressman Steve Toth, thank you.
And to you as well. God bless you.
And
well, in Chicago was another holiday weekend of violence. 9 people have been killed and at least 24 others were wounded across the city. Those are the numbers now. That can always change, of course. Meanwhile, for over a year, we've continued to hear the term defund the police, many from the left and through a summer of riots as well. But could that tune be changing, especially in the city of Minneapolis, where this kind of all started? Joining us now to discuss, Lieutenant Randy Sutton, founder of the Wounded Blue. Your reaction, Randy, to the rise in crime and the shootings, there are murders. I mean, all these cities across the country have seen increases, some of them quite significant, for instance, in Portland. What's your reaction to that?
Well, it was inevitable. How can you police major cities without being given the resources? And at the same time, you have the anti-police sentiment that has created what is in essence a vacuum of law enforcement. Remember this, that as of July 1st of this year, just a couple days ago, the sweeping anti-law enforcement laws went into effect in Illinois. So you have the perfect storm of a major crime increase. Now, what's interesting in Minneapolis is that for the first time, elected city officials have actually been held accountable for their inadequacies when it comes down to protecting the people. And a lawsuit has now brought that to light.
Yeah, and in fact, so people know, a district judge has ordered the city to hire more police officers. The city council and the mayor there also must, quote, immediately take any and all necessary action to ensure that they fund a police force. So you even have a district judge recognizing that it's a problem. Even that judge is saying this is cause and effect, and the solution is to get the police force back to where it needs to be, right?
Exactly, and this is the first time in America that this has happened. Where, and remember, this arose out of people in the community having to go to a judge and file a lawsuit to tell the elected city officials to do what they were voted in to do, and that is protect their own city, and yet they refuse to do it. But there's another problem here. That is, who wants to be
a matter of holding those responsible if they attack a cop, because we're seeing that more often. What do you think changes it in people's minds so they say, you know what, I'd be proud to be a police officer?
Well, what we're seeing nationally is a huge drop in recruitment across the board. In fact, for the first time in history, St. Louis did not have one applicant for the police job. Not one.
Wow.
Single person. This has never happened before. So for Minneapolis, in order to try and recruit people, literally they're going to have to offer some type of incredible pay and benefit package to ask people to actually apply. I don't think they're going to do it because they're going to fail right now. I can tell you right now that the city of Minneapolis is going to fail the judges' requirements simply because they have made it so incredibly onerous to become a police officer in Minneapolis and other places. I mean, look at Chicago. Yeah. You know, as of the first of this month, these incredibly anti-law enforcement laws that were put into place by the state legislature in Illinois have now gone into effect. I mean, Mayor Lightfoot is an utter, absolute failure when it comes down to protecting the citizens of Chicago. And the state legislature has now created an environment that's even worse.
I think a lot of people would agree with you as far as what's going on in Chicago and in other cities as well. Let's hope the pendulum swings back and people actually put money back into police forces, as they're being told to do in Minneapolis, and also that people respect police officers as they should. Lieutenant Randy Sutton, thank you so much, sir.
And here's a look at some of the other stories making headlines today. President Biden appeared to fumble with his notes during a recent visit to Central Lake, Michigan, when asked about the recent cyber attacks on U.S. companies. The president didn't seem to have the answer and instead read off a note card given to him by his team. Biden's poor performance sparked Republican criticism, especially from Representative Ronnie Jackson, who's still calling for the president to take a cognitive test. Meanwhile, the Canadian-based company behind the Keystone Pipeline is suing for $15 billion in damages from the U.S. This after the massive project was canceled by the Biden administration. TC Energy filed the notice of intent with the State Department, saying the move constitutes a breach of the U.S.'s NAFTA obligations and caused the company to suffer massive losses. And Atlanta police are still looking for the person who killed 3 people at a local country club, including pro golfer Gene Siller. Now, Cobb County police responded to the grisly scene yesterday. This is in the hospital recovering from a scheduled intestinal surgery. Let's go to our Rome correspondent, Alex Salvi, for the latest on the story. Alex, good to see you. What can you tell us?
Yeah, good morning, Amanda. So it was a rather abrupt announcement by the Vatican on Sunday, coming just 3 hours after Pope Francis was making public remarks from that window right over my shoulder. And then before not too long, we were hearing that Pope Francis was in the hospital for a surgery, which they're calling precautionary. But still, the lack of details behind that whole incident, where they did say that the Pope did come out of the surgery and it was successful. But once again, a lack of details until about 2 hours ago. The Vatican releasing a statement with more details, countering some of the reports that we were hearing last night, saying it wasn't just a 1-hour surgery, it was a 3-hour surgery that removed half of the Pope's large intestine. But they are saying that he is feeling better, but he is going to stay in the hospital for at least 7 days as a precautionary measure. Amanda?
Yeah, it's interesting, too, that you point out they started off saying this was precautionary, but a surgery like this, from my knowledge, does require some planning. Thanks, Alex.
All right, Former President Donald Trump held a July 4th rally in Sarasota, Florida, on Saturday. He talked to everything from President Biden's international policies to calls from Democrats. Newsmax was the only major news channel to air the speech in its entirety. And let's unpack what we heard. We welcome our panel here, Amy Tarkanian, GOP strategist and former Nevada State GOP chair, Rich Valdez, host of This Is America, and Tom Borelli, GOP strategist and contributor to Real America's Voice. Amy, I'll start with you. What was your takeaway from it?
Well, I think it's pretty evident that he still is the top dog, so to speak, and he had quite the crowd. I know that he always enjoys talking about the size of the crowd, the energy of the crowd, and he was able to hit on numerous topics where he could once again say, I told you so, where he was correct and where President Biden is making numerous missteps, especially with immigration, especially with dealing with China, and all of the mistakes that he's even making, simple ones, while he's even addressing the friendly media. The fact that he's not even able to answer simple questions. I think President Trump, he's shown once again.
Yeah, you know, Rich, I saw some of the media trying to create something out of the Governor DeSantis kind of asking the president not to come to town because of what's going on. To me, it's a different location in the state. Life goes on as horrible things happen and we deal with them. You can't put everything on hold. So I felt like it was maybe making something out of nothing. Am I wrong on that? What's your thought?
Yeah, I tend to agree with that statement. I think it's something out of nothing. Look, if this were going to be in the immediately stricken part of the state, I would agree probably not a good look. Right. But being somewhere else, I think it's ideal that the president continues to beat the drum for the message that he's got. I mean, something that the president has been great at has been keeping his finger on the pulse of exactly where American sentiment is, and Americans are not satisfied. He often touts his achievement that he'd been reelected by a bigger margin than any previous president. And I think that that's indicative of the country saying, hey, look, we want better, we want more, and we're not going to let this COVID fiasco and everything that came about with it stop us.
Yeah. Tom, before I get to you, I did want to show this. Here's what former President Trump had to say about the search and rescue mission that's going on down in the southern part of the state. He was talking to our Heather Childers, Newsmax's Heather Childers, before he actually went out and gave the speech. And he talked to her about the job that the governor is doing. Let's listen to that.
Well, we mutually agreed, and I just thought, you know, he's working very hard. He's doing a very good job, and he should be there. I told him, I said, you should stay there. This is not that important for you. He, of all people, should be there.
Yeah, so Tom, give me the dynamic you think is going on between Governor DeSantis and the former president right here. What are we not seeing that you think is going on?
Well, Bob, I think clearly they've been talking a lot. I think they're absolutely on the same page. They're really coordinating some of their messaging. And I think that's really good for the Republican Party. I think that's good for former President Trump. I think that's great for Governor DeSantis because he's really proven to be an absolute leader of all the governors, I think, going forward. So I think for those Republicans who are eager for a President Trump-DeSantis ticket, that would be very exciting in the next presidential election. I believe those sorts of talks are happening. Whether it will occur or not, we don't know, but it's a good thing to watch.
Amy, I was kind of curious, how does DeSantis play out west?
Oh, they love him. In fact, he has actually been here I'm in Honolulu, Hawaii right now for my daughter who we're sending off to college. Yes, but in Nevada, he actually recently visited for a fundraising event, and the Republican Nevadans absolutely adore him and think the world of him. And I do have friends in Florida as well who don't want him to run for president because they love the job that he's doing in Florida and they would hate to see him go. But to piggyback on what Tom was saying about this relationship with former President Trump, I think it's a breath of fresh air, the fact that these two leaders in our party can be complementary of one another at a time when the environment is so toxic. So I think it's welcome.
Amy, we got to run, but what time is it there?
3:48.
Oh, my goodness. And in Hawaii, of all places, where you want to just hang around. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate you devoting your time. You're always a loyal participant in these things, and we truly appreciate it because we love having you as a guest. And Rich Valdez and Tom Borelli, the same, may be failing to unite the country.
And according to the New York Times, today, flying the flag from the back of a pickup truck, see that quote there on your screen, or over a lawn is increasingly seen as a clue, albeit an imperfect one, to a person's political affiliation in a deeply divided nation.
Let's bring our panel back. Amy Tarkanian, Rich Valdez, Tom Borelli. Tom, let me ask you, there was an article in the New York Times, that's what we're talking about here, that said supporters of former President Trump have embraced the flag, whether it be at his rallies or across conservative media, but some are worried that the left has all but ceded using the national symbol. And to me, it's like, well, if you're on the left and you lost the flag, that's your own fault. But what's your take on for instance, I don't want the flag to be considered negative by either side. That's me.
Oh, Bob, I totally agree with you. Look, it's our nation's flag, and how many hundreds of thousands of soldiers over the decades died for that flag. And let's not forget World War II. We saved the world, essentially, from Nazism and totalitarianism, Japan. So, no, absolutely, it should be a symbol of unity. And the Democrats are bringing this on themselves because, oh, my God, President Trump's supporters had the American flag, so therefore it must be bad. In some ways, it's part of the Trump derangement syndrome. But, Bob, my flag is flying right outside of my house now, and I'm proud of it.
Yeah, it seems like
absolutely.
It seems like it has become a little bit of a, do you fly your flag, do you not fly your flag? And some Democrat officials have their thoughts also on the 4th of July, including Representative Cori Bush. Now, she tweeted out saying that the flag and the Independence Day is for, there's that tweet right here on your screen. Now, it says when they say that the 4th of July is about American freedom, remember this, the freedom they're referring to is for white people. The land is stolen land and black people still aren't free. Rich, is this type of growing anti-American sentiment the reason critics believe we no longer have a symbol of unity?
Well, I think here's the thing, kind of like Bob said, Amanda, what you have to do is figure out, is the flag on limits or off limits? So either you love America or you don't. And I think there's one party that says, hey, we love America, and it shouldn't be one party. It should be all Americans that love the flag and all Americans that love this country. But it seems that there's a party that's embracing anti-Americanism as a tenet of their platform. This is a problem. We need to do better than what Congresswoman Bush is offering, because there's too many people, as the image is showing right now, that have lost their lives, that have put their lives on the line, that served in multiple capacities. And what do we have? a congresswoman, instead of saying, hey, you know what, God bless America, happy 4th of July, she wants to come out and say, you know what, this is horrible. Now, that's her right, but I think it's equally my right as well as many other people's right to sit there and criticize her because she's wrong.
I did criticize her in a tweet of my own in which I responded, wait a minute, aren't you free? Weren't you free to run for Congress? Weren't you free to post this? You may need to read up a little more about American history. Perhaps you would notice some progress in this imperfect union. And that's the thing that gets me so much, Amy, is it's like, since when was this country or the people in it supposed to be perfect? Number one, I got news for you. People aren't going to be perfect. But because our founders were imperfect means that 4th of July isn't for everybody?
Right. And in her bio, she actually mentions she's a pastor. I don't know many countries, especially third world, where you can be a female pastor, where you can speak freely and be an activist, where you're allowed to place your pronouns she and her and be so open about it. If she doesn't want to display an American flag alongside whichever other flag she may choose, then guess what? She has that right because she lives in a free country. If you want to go ahead and display a pirate flag, you want